Harlan, I mean, I always tell people whether you like the president or not, whether you like Mitch McConnell or not, this doesn't seem to be a good environment to stick to any timetable to get this thing done. What are you hearing?
Well, that's unacceptable. I mean, there must be a timetable that's aggressive because we have midterms coming up, and frankly, Americans are suffering. And the president's frustrated because his loyalties do not lie with the Republican Party. I mean, he's executed a hostile takeover of the Republican Party. His loyalties lie to the American people, whom he made a promise to repeal and replace Obamacare. And he's been sitting there, and he's said repeatedly that I am in the Oval Office ready to sign a piece of legislation. I'm ready to do my part. The president is ready to do his part. But people on the Hill, whether it's in the House or the Senate, are not. This is a real problem, and it's abdicating their responsibility to come forward with real solutions that they were sent to Washington to implement.
But Harlan, they argue, a lot of them, that the president's not doing his part, that he wasn't hopeful enough on the health care thing, that he really hasn't spelled out his ideas, at least in the early stages, on tax cuts or what he would want to see. So they quietly point the finger back at him, not publicly as he does at them. Regardless, I don't see these differences easing.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the president has said that he is flexible. I mean, he has laid out a framework for both tax reform and health care reform for bills that he's willing to sign that are compatible with his platform that he ran for in 2016. And so the president is probably one of the more flexible political players in Washington. But ultimately, he cannot hold their hand on the Hill as they're writing this legislation, or rather not writing this legislation. So, I mean, unless they want to invite the president down to Capitol Hill to start drafting legislation, then let's start having a debate on this. But at this point, on the Hill, we're not even having a debate on these solutions. That's a real problem.
All right, so you're in the camp that says the president's done nothing wrong and that publicly tweeting nasty things about the leadership is a constructive development.
Well, I mean, he's holding their feet to the fire. Ultimately, you have to start delivering for the American people, or we're going to start firing Republicans. I mean, the president executed...
But let's say that happens. Let's say that happens. It burdens the president as well, right? Not only do they lose their majorities, within a nanosecond of the Democrats coming in, impeachment hearings are going to begin.
Oh, I'm certainly not saying that we should replace the Republicans on the Hill with Democrats.
No, I know, but that would be the result, right?
I actually highly doubt that. I believe that there are tens of millions of Americans that are like me. They don't consider themselves creatures of the establishment.
But do you feel it's constructive for the president to go after, let's say, a primary replacement for senators like Jeff Flake, who've challenged him, questioned him? Is that constructive, knowing that it could likely yield a Democratic senator a pickup there?
What difference does it make at this point? I mean, if you're going to have...
Well, I think it makes a big difference. I know that Senator Flake is certainly not the president's cup of tea. There are many senators who would probably readily agree with that. Neither is he for them. But he's in better shape with a guy with an R in front of his name than someone with a D.
Well, Jeff Flake's not writing any legislation. He's against extending the border wall on the Arizona border. I mean, the guy's just as bad as a lot of Democrats. So, I mean, either he starts delivering...
He's more of a yes vote on tax reform than any Democrat.
Look, here's what it's going to come to. I mean, I don't think that it's a binary choice between Jeff Flake and generic Democrat. I think that you can actually field really good people that are, frankly, more compatible with the president to challenge these people. And, you know, the only problem that I see is that there's not an infrastructure in place that's aligned with the president's agenda outside the White House. Because, as I was about to say, the president executed a hostile takeover of the Republican Party, but unfortunately, much of the establishment that were never Trumpers are still running the party. He's got to replace these people in order to effectively remake the party in his image. And that hasn't been done yet.
All right, we'll have to watch closely, Harlan. Harlan Hill, political consultant extraordinaire, on where this all goes from here.